Pacific Monterey Bay Public Radio. My name is Mae Brussell. The title of my program is World Watchers. Before we begin World Watchers, I want to say that the views expressed here are those of myself and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kazoo staff or board of directors. This hour, World Watchers, is made possible in part by Aries Arts in the heart of Capitola Village, serving Santa Cruz's growing consciousness for over 20 years. That is a new sponsor for this program, and we appreciate that. It sounds nice to say. Aries Arts is part of the World Watchers, helping World Watchers and Kazoo. The broadcast I'm doing of World Watchers is program number 836. It's December the 14th, 1987, and the year is growing older and will close very shortly. What a year this has been. The Reaganism of the week, the quotation of the week that I found interesting, Lou Cannon, the reporter, always prints one in the newspapers every week, was when Ronald Reagan was asked a question about Mr. Gorbachev and said Gorbachev was popular. Did he mind that? And Reagan said, no, I don't resent his popularity or anything else. Good Lord, I co-starred with Errol Flynn once. Well, I wonder how that translates for people who've heard my many, many broadcasts about Errol Flynn in the Gestapo at a time when Ronald Reagan was an informer for J. Edgar Hoover, starting in 1941. He was the informer in 41. J. Edgar Hoover was in touch with Heinrich Himmler through that period up until Pearl Harbor. Their common denominator was the FBI and Interpol, Hitler's police agency. And he not only starred with Errol Flynn once, he starred with him in 1940 and 1942 at the height of Errol Flynn's activities with his agent, Dr. Urban, of the Gestapo, the Waffen-SS. And I often think that the Gestapo rubbed each other in a way that they both used those philosophies to get where they were going to go for a long period of years. Ronald Reagan is still pulling a lot of the Nazi activities that should have ended after the end of World War II, and I detail those week after week. And just a few weeks ago, I cited the recent New Yorker magazine and documents from Freedom of Information Act that described Ronald Reagan's informer activities, informer T-19, in 1941. Last week, Raisa Gorbachev was walking around holding the hand of Pamela Harriman. Somebody on the talk show part of my program wanted to talk about that, and I said I would bring in a lot of material about Mrs. Harriman. It was Errol Harriman, who was our ambassador to Moscow, who began the first spying against the Soviet Union when World War II was over. He started it, setting up agencies for William Donovan and William Casey in 1943, the same year that the Nazis, in quotes, went underground, the notorious year 1943, where so many things were taking place to set the stage for the resurgence of Nazism, which is coming in leaps and bounds now. And I'll detail some of that information I've gotten from Germany regarding the neutron bomb for the greater part of this program. Next week, I'll discuss Errol Harriman and his wife, Pamela, and their role in genocide. They were very strong in entertaining persons who were, in fact, in favor of genocide and racial policies. They had a conference where Dr. Ernest Rudin came to speak in the United States. It was a conference on eugenics at the Museum of Natural History in New York, and Dr. Ernest Rudin in 1932 was speaking for the Harrimans, and then went on to be the high Nazi official in charge of, in quotes, protection of German blood and German honor. And this information I'll detail with you. It's interesting how Mrs. Gorbachev, who may easily be a white Russian czarist, and she's playing the First Lady of Russia quite eloquently, but that does not necessarily mean that she came up from peasant stock of any sort or is part of the Russian Revolution, except for the purpose of putting the Tsar or the Hitler entourage onto what would be the throne then of Russia. Everything looked good the week of the summit and the parties, but we have to keep this in mind. because the Harrimans, well, they were Democrats all their life, were very instrumental in entertaining people who were behind genocide and genocidal policies. I appreciate somebody calling in last week about that connection of Mrs. Harriman touring around Washington and the first person to entertain Mrs. Gorbachev. But we do have to keep our eyes open and keep our attention to where these people came from or where they might be going, because wherever they go, we go with them in some way or another. There was an article this past week, a $1 million reward for Joseph Mengele. There are people in Palestine, in Jerusalem rather, in Israel, and in the United States that do not believe that Joseph Mengele did not die in Brazil in 1979. I know he didn't die in 1979. And there is absolutely not a bit of proof that that was Joseph Mengele in the grave when they dug it up June the 6th, 1985. That was such a crazy story that rather it was the story, the account was that he was fished out of the water in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then the autopsy was done June 6, 1985. That drowned man was not Joseph Mengele. So I've done so many broadcasts on that subject at the time and detailed the information. And usually the material that I select for you to have on the air are things that are unfinished, where the original cover story was a lie, where I update it later, where the story can't rest because the story isn't true. Now, many of you might have seen this past week that the head of NATO is now going to be a German. The San Francisco Chronicle had a story December the 12th. German gets top NATO post. NATO appointed West German Defense Minister Manfred Warner, W-O-E-R-N-E-R, to succeed Britain's Lord Carrington as Secretary General. Lord Carrington is on the board of directors of co-partners of Henry Kissinger, of Kissinger Associates, the same agency that Representative Henry Gonzalez accused of having the State Department, leasing their State Department to Kissinger Associates. And Lord Carrington is stepping aside. So for the very first time since NATO was ever put together, Mr. Warner will become the head of NATO from Germany. The San Francisco Chronicle said Warner, a tireless campaigner for greater military spending to counter a Soviet military buildup, won the decisive backing of the United States and key NATO members, including France and Britain. He will be the first West German to hold the NATO's most senior political post, France and Britain, and those are the two countries with the United States that I want to share the information with you this evening about the neutron bomb. The neutron bomb, I'm sure most of you know just what that is, as against the atomic bomb that leads so much radiation and messy stuff that can contaminate the earth it drops on and things around it for so long. The great scientists came up with a neutron bomb, a form of radiation that only gets rid of the people, so that the houses and the churches and the homes and the clothes and the belongings are all intact, and the new tenant comes in and you don't have to worry anymore. The people just lie down and die, and you move in and take over. That's really much more sensible. Why have all that mess? And, of course, it's my contention, and I did about 8 broadcasts on it, that the neutron bomb was tested in Cameroon, that the explosion there in 1986 was a neutron bomb tested by the United States and Israel for the purposes of seeing how it works over the ground. It's tested also in the South Pacific. I'll do more on that in a moment. But to give a warning to Russia, just as we dropped the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we didn't have to do that, and people agree that the Japanese were ready to surrender, and if we had seen this happen in a place where there weren't all the women and children during the daytime, they might have just as easily surrendered. The point was to give a lesson about how we don't hesitate to kill women and children and families who are not at war, not at all, and we could test the plutonium and the uranium, try 2 different kinds of bombs at the same time, and then Russia would get the lesson. We have the bomb, now what are you going to do about it? And so one of the reasons that is part of the historical record, we dropped the atomic bomb in order to declare that for the for the moment, we're masters of the world. You don't have it, and we have it. And so I went to my files of earlier articles. I have one from 1978. This is in the Las Vegas Sun, titled "Russia Tested the Neutron Bomb," according to Brezhnev. Soviet President Leonid Brezhnev told a group of U.S. senators Friday in Moscow, they were visiting in Moscow, the Soviet Union had tested, but they hadn't started the production of a neutron bomb in 1978. One senator said he didn't think that was a serious matter. Mr. Brezhnev was upbeat because Jimmy Carter was friendly towards him. The tensions in Washington had been reduced. And Senator Sam Nunn, who attended the session, commented on the neutron bomb. He said the whole thing about whether they tested one or whether they might have one or the capability of one isn't an important factor. In some ways, I feel more comfortable if the Soviets had neutron bombs rather than the monster they call the tactical nuclear weapons. Neutron bombs could be used locally for defense or against tank attacks and so forth. Senator Abraham Rybakov was at the meeting and had a session, and Brezhnev then told them that they had actually exploded the neutron bomb, but they weren't going to manufacture them at the moment. The article continued, this is 1978, the United States has tested its own neutron bomb underground, and President Carter ordered a go-ahead on the development and protection and production of the components that could be used for it. A decision to assemble the weapons and deploy them in Europe has been delayed indefinitely. And again, this goes back to 1978. Brezhnev was in a jovial mood, exchanged friendly words with them, and they agreed that they would both sit on the bomb. Each one had it, and they wouldn't be manufacturing them with any great speed. And starting in September of 1986, I did broadcast, as I say, on neutron bombs, on the origin of chemical biological warfare after World War II, genetic warfare, and the use of various testings in Utah, the atomic tests that were quite dangerous to sheep and humans, many who got cancer afterwards. And I also cited the visit of Shimon Peres to Cameroon and his taking 17 Israeli soldiers, Army medical with him in the medical corps as soon as that explosion allegedly out of the lake in Cameroon was happening. The Israeli doctors were there and, of course, broadcast 769, 770, 771, 774. These are all World Watchers. September and October of 86 were all on the neutron bomb. Now I'm going to share with you for probably the remaining part of the program about the neutron bomb in Europe and the story of how it's developing and how it is placed in Germany, ready to be put on atomic warheads for offensive weapons. There is a World Watcher, a lady who gets the broadcast, who's corresponded with me in Germany, and she's terrified of what's going on there. And she said it really looks like a war is ready to start. I bring this up because with the last week at the summit, I think it's appropriate to see what's going on the other side of the world and how the people there and here decide that we don't need to know everything that's going on. If you have friends in Germany or Europe, they'll tell you these stories. And if you don't have, you don't know what's happening. So I want to share just German newspapers. Now, if I try some German words this evening, forgive my pronunciation. I don't even pretend to pronounce German words, but just to get the effect of what the headlines are saying in Germany, I want to share these with you. Spiegel magazine, issue 43, 1987, had an article called Catastrophe. That's a translation of their lead story. And this is a resume of what went on at Cameroon. They just came out with this report. The scientists have now discovered the cause of the catastrophe at Cameroon, whereby 1,700 people living near Neos Lake region died. Germany, Iceland, and Japan have scientists that believe they have solved the puzzle. Now, this has been going on. This is December of 87. The explosion was September of 86. And there hasn't been one report that can absolutely say how the people got their burns or for a fact what happened. They believe this is happening or they believe this is possible, and every report so far has been clarified by the word that they believe, not that they solved the puzzle, but they believe they have. They said a constant stream of carbon dioxide combined with other gases transformed into a deadly gas trap, and most of those few who survived, women and children, woke up hours or days after the catastrophe as if they were in a coma. This account from Germany doesn't say, again, how they have the burns, which are not consistent with gases escaping. The article said the only other time scientists ever studied a comparable gas eruption was August 15, 1984, 2 years earlier, near Manoon Lake, where 37 people died from a deadly cloud of gas. The danger, they said, has not been eliminated. Therefore, the 3,400 people cannot return to their farmland. They haven't been allowed to return to the farmland. Now, as I had on the air in 1986, 17 members of the Israeli Army medical team arrived immediately after the explosion, while their Prime Minister, Shimon Peres, was in Cameroon, in the capital of Cameroon, and yet the Israeli scientists have never, or at least not been reported at any of the conferences on what they saw or their conclusions, and Israeli scientists are pretty good at this kind of estimating at what causes these events. Also, I might mention that 3 weeks after I started my broadcast on the neutron testing in Cameroon, the story broke in the London Times, given to them by Mordecai Vanunu, that Israel not only had a large facility for making many atomic bombs, which they had done, but that they could make or were making neutron bombs. And the name neutron was in the headlines of the London Times. Before that could be published, Israel had kidnapped Mordecai Vanunu, and he has only been seen once or twice. He's supposed to be having a trial now on treason for revealing the storage facilities and the factory for the bombs. And only a few articles in all of the year and a half have mentioned the neutron bombs. A friend of mine heard a broadcast on another radio station where Vanunu's brother has been lecturing around the country talking about the plight of his brother, the way he's been treated in Israel, and the way he was kidnapped out of England and then taken to Rome and then to Israel, injected, tied down, and then sequestered away. And I understand that his brother is talking about the neutron bomb. I had contact with him. I have the phone number of a lady in Boston that set up his speaking engagement, but I understand that would be a big breakthrough to explain why they're treating Mordecai Vanunu the way they are. This article tells, as I say, about these doctors getting together in having a conference from Germany, Iceland, and Japan, and not including the Israeli team that was the one right on the spots. The next article from Germany is March 24th, 1987, out of TAZ, T-A-Z paper, and the article said, I won't try the pronunciation of the headlines. The gist of the article is that during Margaret Thatcher's visit to Germany in March of 87, she did admit that various defense ministers under her had lied to those in the House of Commons for 4 years, that there were 300 of the controversial new atomic grandees, such as first-strike weapons already deployed in West Germany by the United States Armed Forces. And it's these atomic warhead grandees that are to be replaced with the neutron bombs once the atomic weapons are in place. The article says the defense minister has always maintained that the decision to deploy hadn't been made, whereas the decision to modernize the nuclear arsenal was actually made in 1983, that long ago, in Montebello, Canada. The modernization of these grenades is supposed to absorb the disarmament effect, in case there's a disarmament between the United States and the Soviet Union, and the decision to reduce nuclear weapons in Europe. These grandees are not affected by the current U.S.-Soviet arms talks. They are meant to bring Warsaw Pact troops to a stop as soon as they reach NATO territory. This defense, if we have a defense, they said is a form of suicide. They need the grandees, and later articles will show how the neutrons will be put into them. The newspaper TAZ, T-A-Z, October the 28th, 1987, has a long editorial on the placement of the neutron bombs, and the article says President Mitterrand announced yesterday that he is prepared to build the neutron bomb should it be necessary. And as this story unfolds, first they say we have it, but we aren't making them, we're assembling them, but we would make it if we have to. But the punchline is that they're already made and deployed in Germany, and that the new head of NATO will be a man who's been pushing rearmament of Germany constantly. And of course, the president of Germany, Mr. Richard von Weizsäcker, his father was the liaison of Adolf Hitler to the Vatican and was instrumental in the decision of what days the Battle of the Bulge would take place, where the Waffen-SS united with the United States Army and the OSS. So Mitterrand, early in these articles, and I tell you the punchline so you know where it's going, he says that we could bring this up, this topic. He was going to Germany, and he announced about the neutron bombs just before he was to go to Germany. He was going to spend 4 days with Helmut Kohl, but the newspaper noted that this is a strange thing for him to bring this up, this topic at this moment, that he makes this announcement just when he's ready to go to Germany. Since 1984, he has avoided any talk of the subject of the neutron bomb. The main question in France has always been where the neutron should be deployed, and it turns out that the decision in Germany was to decide which cities it would be deployed in. This article says the openness of the discussion now about neutrons can only have one reason. The conditions have changed in Mitterrand's mind, and one suspects that being with Helmut Kohl, they don't exactly reject Mitterrand's inquiries about the deployment possibilities of the neutron bomb. A so-called tank barrier, an unproved version of the conventional grenade, can be sold more easily to the public because they won't object to that. It'll look like ground forces. Only with this background does the place and time of Mitterrand's appearance make sense. The discussion of the deployment of the French neutron bomb in West Germany should be opened. And then, of course, there was a long article, July 28th, 1987, an entire full-page story in a German newspaper. It was actually 2 pages. His friend translated it for me, and it's a long story with a lot of material that she didn't translate, but much that I'll share with you now. I couldn't possibly put it all on the air. The gist of the story is that Charles Herny, H-E-R-N-Y, Francois Mitterrand's close military advisor, he was France's first socialist defense minister, stepped down as a result of the Greenpeace affair in 1985, but he's very active now, and he represents the reconciliation between the socialists and the military. And keep in mind that Mr. Le Pen, a gentleman who's very high up in the political entourage of France and would like to be president, is really an outright Nazi. He's as close to a Nazi as you can get in Europe, outside of the Greek military junta that was in power, thanks to our CIA, starting in 1967 for a few years. Mr. Le Pen and some very high-up people in the French government are outright fascists. But the military and the Socialist Party are working together. The article explains that Mr. Herné is going to assist France and Germany because they have mutual defense interests. The old problem was the French tactical nuclear weapons, the Pluto, that could fall on East and West Germany, but they've solved all this with the Hades missile, a range of 350 kilometers, like KMs, I guess, stationed in Germany. I'm not sure how far that is, but it would reach these missiles that the Hades would reach inside of East Germany. They don't advocate German nuclear weapons at this time because the Soviets wouldn't tolerate that, but there's no reason why West Germany shouldn't have a co-decision right as to their own use, and so the gentlemen in France are working very closely with the Germans. France does possess deterrence. West Germany doesn't. So progress has to be made. The signals are on go for the neutron bomb. It lacks only President Mitterrand's signature and public opinion. And then they go on later and explain that he doesn't even have to tell you if it's there. That's part of the Constitution, that it could be secret, so there's no guarantee his signature isn't on it. Pierre Mesmer, who was the head of the Gaullists, Charles de Gaulle's longest defense minister, from 1960 to 69 and premier under Papandreou, has a key position within the right-wing military camp. The denuclearization of Europe that they're worried about, the one that was discussed at our recent summit meeting, the denuclearization does not come into question for France's tactical and strategical weapons. The strategy of Europe's defense must be based on tactical and strategic weapons. Long-term perspective for the defense of Europe can only be a defense with European means. The Pluto and Hades missiles are in West Germany. The neutron bomb solves the contradiction, the demands of West Germans and the French. Germans fear that the bird, the BIRD, will be destroyed because of the neutron bomb. It is not a mass destructive weapon, and France's hesitancy to deploy its troops in Germany without nuclear backup. All parties agreed on the French nuclear policy. The French are not as sensitive to the nuclear question as the Germans are. The French public is more balanced. Nuclear weapons constitute for the president a deterrence for them, and deterrence must take technological development into account. The technological development is the placement, of course, of the neutron bombs. There's a fear in Europe of disarmament because of Mr. Gorbachev, and therefore the plans have been made by France and Germany that they would not be sympathetic necessarily to the reaction of the German public this time. Therefore, the plans for a French-German nuclear alliance do not belong in the public square. That would be a great psychological mistake. And, of course, Jimmy Carter played down the importance of the neutron bomb, and when Ronald Reagan became president, he tried to push the selling of the neutron bomb in Europe. That's when Alexander Haig had William Casey of the CIA using CIA journalists as cover. Regular journalists in Europe actually were working for the CIA trying to get the neutron bomb over there, and John Singlaub was bucking up against Jimmy Carter when Carter was president because he thought the neutron bomb should be deployed in Southeast Asia. That was one of the reasons Carter brought Singlaub home, besides the fact that he didn't want the troops out of South Korea. He wanted the neutron bomb, and go ahead on that. Now, another editorial, July 28, 1987. This is the gist of this article. Ex-Chancellor Schmidt of Germany stated in a recent speech and in a newspaper, Die Zeit, that the disarmament talks on scrapping the medium-range missiles, should they be realized, would be the first time talks led to disarmament and not rearmament. That's what the excitement was with Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev. However, Mr. Schmidt said, without even a simple missile having been pulled out of the agreement or even being ready to sign it, the next step that follows then is rearmament. And rearmament was being engineered starting the end of July, as if it hasn't been going on since the end of World War II. And the deeper meaning of the French test, this article says, or editorial says, lies in the fact that on the island of Muroa, Muroa, the atoll, it's becoming very clear that France is not only developing the neutron bomb, but they've been testing it in the South Pacific and the islands over there, not on their own. And the British, during World War II and other times, tested their biological chemical warfare on Africans in Nigeria. That's why I believe they're capable of testing the neutron bomb in Cameroon, but the French were testing it over at the Muroa Atoll in South Pacific. France is developing the neutron bomb for mass production. This was July 28. The militarists are ready in agreement where it should be deployed and in the general German Republic and along which borders. The German neighbors, some ways, will have to be convinced. As enticement, the Germans are offered what they call the second key, in quotes, or co-determination rights partnership for the first steps to a nuclearized Germany. French nuclear bombs with German rights constitute more of a rearmament than the NATO double-track decision, where at least negotiations were envisioned to which Gorbachev could react. Another story, April 14th, 1987. Does the United States have the neutron bomb? This is out of the Frankfurt Rundschau. That's the name of the paper. The British University of Bradford has come out with a study which reveals the United States already has 600 neutron warheads on hand in Seneca, New York. The study, titled Preparations for First Use of Nuclear Weapons in Europe. And I'll take a 1-minute break and get back to the subject of United States and neutron bombs. Now I'll get back on the second half of World Watchers, program number 836. This is an article out of England by a professor who did some other work. His name is Dan Plesch, Plesch. Does the U.S. have the neutron bomb? And according to this account, he wrote in Great Britain that the neutron bombs can be brought over to Europe within a few hours in a case of crisis, and they are seen as the overall modernization program of the Theater of Nuclear Force, the TNF, which comprises of three things. One, extended range, how far you can shoot it, greater precision, how you won't miss it, and three, larger explosive power, how you can do the most damage. And these neutrons can be delivered either by airplane or by lance or Pershing missiles. And according to this article that it's from Frankfurt, said that according to the study, some of the conventional nuclear weapons can also be equipped in the nuclear weapons with the neutron warheads by building a special electronic device into them which can be transformed into a neutron warhead. And this Mr. Dan Plesch, the author of this studies, has talked about the modernization of NATO. Again, the head of NATO is now going to be from the German Ministry of Defense, and nuclear weapons could be used at the onset of any conflict, but neutron bombs would be available. Another article out of magazine Weiner, W-E-I-N-E-R, Weiner, July 1987, on neutron bombs. Concealed, the headline translating it. I have the German here, but the translation is concealed, the deployment of neutron weapons in the German Republic. The article said the military refers to the new warheads as W.79 warheads. They are called enhanced radiation warheads. July 1987, Weiner published an article based on research similar to the one in England by Daniel Plesch. He wrote the one previously, the other article I shared with you, and they cited, in addition, material in the London Guardian and enhanced what he had said in the other article about the 300 neutrons waiting at the U.S. Air Force Base in Ramstein in Germany. And I got a map from Germany, and this lady sent me well, it's unbelievable, the tanks and the Army camps. I think America has 380 military bases. In Germany, the whole map is just marked off with tanks all aimed at the Soviet Union. They're not aimed over to France or up to England, or all these tanks have their guns aimed at the Soviet Union. And it really is scary because Mr. Gorbachev made some statement that in one of these articles says, you may hit us, but we won't kill all of them, but it's going to be very messy when we release, what we have to back at you if this nuclear confrontation takes place. But now we want to put the neutrons into the nuclear warheads. The article said the British Parliament, as well as the German Bundestag, were deceived for a long time. We know the British were, and the Germans were too. While NATO, under Lord Carrington, that's Kissinger Associates, propagated a one-sided disarmament of 1,400 nuclear warheads, in reality of being able to modernize the nuclear arsenal, it is now proceeding to be modernized. Many observers at Montebello suspected at the time of a conference they had in 1983 that the decision was kept secret in order to prevent a public debate on the subject, such as the one that took place over the cruise missiles. At the NATO Nuclear Planning Group meeting in Stavanger, Norway, in the middle of May, much talk for publicity's sake was made about zero option. But in reality, discussions resolved not only dismantling nuclear weapons, that wasn't what the discussions were mainly about. It was modernizing the program and modernizing the weapons. If you dismantle one, you modernize the others. The Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung correspondent pointed out that it would be some time before the public realized that yes, in quotes, to zero option would only mean newer and technically differentiated weapons. NATO is now going to continue and work on the zero option, making new weapons at the same time. And much of the new weapons include, as I say, the neutron bomb. Now, another long article published in Germany, July 27, 1987, 2 full pages, the top down. The first report of the French neutron bomb and its deployment into West Germany with the second key. That's the ability of Germany to make decisions on where it goes. Germany will have a choice in its use. The neutron bomb is a tactical bomb. It is to be mounted on the Hades missile, a short-range missile. France's leading military experts in the 3 largest parties are unanimous regarding French-German cooperation into the military area. Mr. Herney does not exclude equipping the German missile with the German army with the Hades missile. The Liberal Party's defense expert, Mr. Dayet, agreed that deployment of the Hades is now, up to now, has been no official approval of Mitterrand, but it could, as I say, be done in private, and that would be legal. France says they were going to make the neutron bomb to protect Germany. That's their reason. Is the neutron bomb being produced? The article asks. That's the question of the moment. While Mr. Mesmer, the gentleman I mentioned before, denies it, as does Herney, there's something that cannot be hidden in the defense budget. It required Mitterrand's signature. The defense minister, Giraud, explained in April that one should not let uncertainty regarding production of the neutron bomb reign. Speaker of the Defense Ministry, Mr. Fobe, answered to the question as to whether the public would be informed of any decision regarding productions. The answer is no. The public will be no longer informed. With all of this information on my desk, I listened very carefully to the entire proceedings, that as much as we could get from the summit, and I didn't hear the word neutron mentioned. If I'm wrong, call me up on the talk show part of the program, or if you get this broadcast from other places, let me know, write to me, and let me know if you heard neutron mentioned. This article says the political defense decisions of the president in France may be kept secret. Germany's agreement of deployment, with the exception of a few dissenting voices, who voted for the neutron bomb overwhelmingly. President Jimmy Carter gave in to the Americans and European peace movement when he decided not to build it or have them deployed in Europe. One won't be able to depend upon the same reaction from a French president again. Everything is going more military, not less, and that's a little bit scary. We don't have to tell you. We made a mistake last time. You made a fuss. We don't want the fuss. And we've learned our lesson, so now we'll do what we want, and what are you going to do about it? The French nuclear strategy, according to this article, is changing correspondingly to the refinement of the nuclear weapon technology. They are now in a position to produce a neutron. French strategy is gearing up to a forward defense, which is actually an offense. If you go too much forward, you're right in the lapse of the Soviet Union. Since de Gaulle's time, France had tried to reach the standard of great power in the nuclear arms race. The strategists question the problem of validity, credibility of the old force de frappe, since it takes into account the immediate total destruction of the enemy. That was the problem. France requires a change in the doctrine of deterrence. This is impossible without an approach to bond Germany. West Germany is more attractive to French weapons industry. West Germany's strategic position makes it of utmost and foremost importance for France. The tests of the neutron bomb have concluded that everything is ready, and public opinion stands behind this. And this article continues, the only thing lacking, and they repeat this in every article that was in Germany, was the signature of Mitterrand. Then they repeat again that it could be kept secret and you wouldn't know it. Politicians such as Herney and Mesmer regard the double zero position as a challenge. Mr. Gorbachev's proposals have created confusion in Europe. The Hades missile has a range of 350 kilometers, as I said, and this article said it is envisioned as the carrier of the neutron bomb, and that is why France was doing tests in Moreau in South Pacific in the 1980s. Another article from TAZ, the newspaper in Germany, July 29th. The deployment of the neutron bomb is a topic for Bonn, Germany. French people suggest the deployment for Germans, and the Germans are temporarily, this article says, against the deployment. Opposition in the discussion takes a coldly calculated sabotage of Geneva talks. However, there was a meeting at the Stockholm Peace Group called the SIPRI, SIPRI, and discussion of the deployment of the neutron bomb came up. It marks a sharp policy turn from the French policy, which was never to allow a German finger on the nuclear or the neutron trigger. Then there was another article out of Germany on the neutron bomb. There were three more. One says, this is reporter von George Blum from Germany. The neutron bomb, who was helping to build it? A considerable part of the plutonium of the French neutron bomb will be produced in the fast breeder Super Phoenix at Malville with German cooperation. Now, Phoenix was arising from the ashes, the legend arising from the ashes. Phoenix could be the Germans rising out of the ashes of World War I or II. The Phoenix program in Vietnam was one of defoliating the villages, killing women, children, elderly, not people in battle as we usually think of it. People dropped out of airplanes, cut up alive, ears cut off for souvenirs, with the help of many people from Germany who worked with our special forces, the Green Beret, the Delta forces. And I think it's interesting that France has a neutron bomb super, the breeder called the Super Phoenix, that will be part of the plutonium, or is already. The cost of the Super Phoenix can only be justified by its potential military function. The Melville plant had a malfunction and was shut off in June '87. Should one day the German utility company, RWE, partly owned by the German government, actually be participating in the military part of Phoenix, then Germany would be in danger of violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And there's talk of Germany helping with the Phoenix in France and with the buildup of the parts necessary to make the neutron bomb. And it gets a little scary, the cooperation of these two, with the new head of NATO, as I say, coming from the German Defense Forces. Another story published in Hanover, October 23rd, 1987, about Mitterrand and the neutron bomb. France is able to build the neutron bomb anytime it wants to. Mr. Mitterrand is negotiating with Helmut Kohl. At the close of a 4-day visit with Kohl, Mitterrand stated he hoped his country would never have to build the bomb because of any threat, since it would truly be hell if he had to do this, build the bomb. Well, they've already been deployed in Germany, according to some of the newspapers. And he said because of a threat that would happen. Well, you don't need a threat to make them, because he's tested them. They have them. We have them. And I believe we tested them with Israel and Cameroon. Then a letter I got from this friend of mine, part of the letter that accompanied all this information. As you will see from these articles, the neutron bomb is already here in West Germany. The map I send you shows you the location of just where the new weapons, the W-79s, are going. They apparently are nothing other than the neutron bombs. A former Pershing II soldier who defected to Germany, to the German side, after 12 years in the army, he wants to be a German citizen, tells us the neutron bombs are not only in Ramstein base, Ramstein, near Luxembourg in the Rhineland-Pfalz area, but also in Siegelsbach and one of the Pershing II sites is near that. The U.S. has more Pershing IIs here than the 108 they supposedly have. The enclosed map doesn't even show the Pershing II and cruise missile sites, which gives you an idea of the concentration of weapons here. And if you can visualize a Germany with over 300 American bases, that is what she sent me. Kecker Spots, Keckerspatz, translated The Bold Sparrow, is the title of the program about the neutron bomb. There are denials about the neutron bomb, but obviously Mitterrand and Kohl have decided what to do. The peace movement, according to some of these people, has no just cause to relax again, and she warns us in the United States, don't get secure. This letter came November 22nd, just shortly a while ago. Don't be secure about any peace agreement between Mr. Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan. That you have to be alert, don't relax because of this deployment and the bringing in more troops to Germany constantly. She said it's just unbelievable what's going on there at the present time. She said a lot of facts belie very good intentions. All the cruise missile and Pershing II sites are being built up. There are new coming and goings over here. The reduction agreement is ready to be signed, but you wouldn't know it. Canadians, in their defense, called the White Paper for 1987 this year, are sending personnel and equipment from Norway, and they're concentrating it in South Germany by way of Norway, with 18,000 people moving from Canada. 6,700 are soldiers, and the rest are family. They will live in the Black Forest area. Up to 2 years ago, Canadian presence in Germany was minimal. The plans are now to triple, to enable a deep strike into the enemy. The description of the measures being taken are quite impressive. There are 37 airports in Germany and airfields now under discussion for expansion and elongation. This includes not only military but civilian airports as well. 550 new shelters and bunkers and garages are being built. They are on the draft board, and each one costs $3 million each. 550 shelters, $3 million each. This is something we don't get in this country. It's hard to visualize what this means with over $1 billion in bunkers being built in Germany. Last week I mentioned the Armageddon in Switzerland, and now they're prepared for war and the bunkers that they built for the Swiss citizens. This friend continued, they will continue to be built according to NATO norm. Construction for survivability, like Switzerland, is 7 days in the event of nuclear or chemical warfare. If Spain kicks out the F-16s, there are contingent plans to also bring them to Ramstein. The specter of Euro-militarism is raising its ominous head. The West European Union is being reactivated, and for the first time, there are joint German-French maneuvers under the name, the name Bold Sparrow is the Kiker Spots, the joint maneuvers, and you've read about them in the newspaper. So if you see a map of Germany, such as she sent to me, you can't help but wonder just exactly what this means with the airstrips, the bunkers, and the peace talk that was going on is similar or identical to the Hitler-Stalin pact. That's when Adolf Hitler made agreements with Stalin. Both of them knew war was inevitable, but they were biding their time to get their armies ready. And I believe that this is what is happening at the present time, while the people that arrange the manipulations for these events get on television, face the nation, and meet the press, and the Sunday shows and the talk shows, Henry Kissinger and Richard Pearl, and the cast of characters. They're all out there giving their expertise, the big new Brzezinski, Jane Kirkpatrick. Their policy is going on. They know what we're sending to Europe. They know what Europe is doing. And the Hitler-Stalin pact shouldn't have given very many people much relief at the time that it took place. But we're reliving everything a second time. And having it a second time is worse, because now we have the lesson of history, and you know what the great philosopher Santana said about if you don't take care of business, it will happen again. That's to paraphrase that famous quotation, that if you don't take care of history, it will happen again. Now, I thought I would give you a couple of light broadcasts. This is a light broadcast, the occult, the human sacrifices, and the linkage to the Defense Department to Heinrich Himmler. We're taking a 3-week break on that so that over Christmas and New Year's things won't be too heavy. So just talking about the neutron bombs in Europe is a subject that I thought I would share with you. Now, I've gotten a lot of calls on the talk show part, and I've mentioned NutraSweet. I thought with the holidays coming up, and if you're concerned about getting too much sugar, let me warn you, maybe because I like sugar, that NutraSweet is a very dangerous substance. And don't be fooled by it, and don't think that you're going to be thinner or lose weight. You might be thinner by getting it, but look at your soft drinks. There are drinks like Craigmont and some of those drinks that don't have it marked. There's hot chocolate drinks that don't have NutraSweet. There are food products that don't have it. And I tell everybody I know, and I've put it on broadcast before, don't go to NutraSweet. Now, a friend, listener, sent me a sheet on a subject of NutraSweet, and I'll share that with you for the remaining of the program and give you the source of information. It's a report to the consumer. Ida Honoroff, maybe you've heard of her, Honorof, P.O. Box 346, Cutten, California, Cutten, 95534. She has a newsletter, and I'll give you the address because I only have about 5 more minutes before the program's over, so I don't have time to share it all or as much as I can. And this is volume 17, the last one, issue 401, December 87, on the FDA cover-up on the hazards of NutraSweet. And also, for people that don't have a problem with sweets, like I do, other people do, she has a report to the consumer information bulletin. And if you send for it, the last one was January 86, at the same address, there's a special offer. 4-page reports are only 25 cents. And there's a $2 minimum order. And they've broken down the subjects here about chemicals in food, herbicides, chemicals in the future of man, aerosol sprays, asbestos, nitrosyms, radiation of food. And there's a list of several hundred products that are dangerous, 402 products that are dangerous, and many would be important to your survival. Of course, there's things on Star Wars and against weapons, but the true cost of pesticides, radiation, can it cause cancer? And this goes into many, many hazardous waste problems. And this full list of 402 subjects, you can get the sheet and then order the ones you want. And I think, I know that you have to live defensively, at least if you want a long life. If you're old, I suppose it doesn't matter what you take in. But if you're young, after 20 years of what's in our environment, you can look for trouble if that neutron doesn't come. Also, there is a publication that called Environmental Action, and the address is 1525 New Hampshire Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C., 20036. And there's a picture in the advertisement of these newsletters. Guess who's coming to dinner? Cancer causing pesticides in your salad, industrial solvents in a glass of water, toxic emissions in your air. You need information on these unwanted guests. Now, what she says about NutraSweet, back in 1973, the G.D. Searle Company, an international pharmaceutical firm located in Skokie, Illinois, the home base of the American Nazi Party, proposed the issuance of a food additive regulation for the safe use of aspartame put in NutraSweet in foods as a nutritive substance with intense sweetness and flavor-enhancing properties. Aspartame is 180 times as sweet as sugar, and according to G.D. Searle, when consumed, it metabolizes, I can't pronounce the word, as a protein, unlike sugar, which is metabolizes, that's the word, as a carbohydrate, metabolizes. One of the scientists who immediately challenged the safety of NutraSweet was Dr. John Olney, who teaches psychiatry and neuropathology at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. Incidentally, the vice president of G.D. Searle was former deputy director of the CIA. For the past 20 years, the National Institute of Mental Health has paid part of his salary under a specific research grant exploring the effects of glutamic acid in laboratory animals, and also glutamate is one of the carbon atoms removed from aspartate, one of the 2 amino acids in aspartame. Only documented the MSG can cause specific lesions in the hypothalamus of the brains, and the important part about NutraSweet that I understand is the effect it does have on the brains, and it breaks the connective tissues of memory and so forth. I don't have time to go into the whole NutraSweet now, but I think if you're interested in the subject of that or food poisoning, I'll give the address again. Ida Honorof, Honorof, like honor, then off, Honorof, P.O. Box 346, Cutten, Cutten, California, 95534. Write and ask for her recent bulletin on NutraSweet, which is very much in the news, and there have been a lot of studies and congressional hearings which are continuously covered up, but I'm very leery of it, and I've seen diagrams of how it does affect the brain and affects the memory. That is one of the most important parts about NutraSweet, is the fear of losing your memory, having the chemicals do this to you and breaking apart those things that hold your past days to your present so that you have some semblance of continuity instead of becoming similar to the Alzheimer's disease, which takes away all your memory. I don't link those two, but I have believed for a long time that Alzheimer's disease is another manifestation of some of the games they're playing on us through various things in food and environment that are very dangerous. Now, I want to conclude this hour of World Watchers that was made possible in part by Aries Arts in the heart of Capitola Village, serving Santa Cruz's growing consciousness for over 20 years. Thank you very much for this part of the World Watchers program. And I'll be back with you. We'll sign off now for a little break, and then I'll be back with you to take the talk show part of the program, and you can participate in that with me.